Broadcasting since 1962, CTC7 was Canberra's only commercial television station and formed a close bond with the city. It pioneered colour television in 1974, and by the 1980s, under the ownership of Kerry Stokes, local programming on the now rebranded Capital 7 TV expanded. Capital 7's growth reflected Canberra itself as the territory came into its own.
When I first joined CTC7, it was a hub of production, really. We were creating various programs, gardening show for instance. We were doing live broadcasts of sporting events. We were covering local Aussie rules. It was just a much greater production facility than anything around now. They basically closed all those things down over a period of time. So it was a vibrant place to work. There would have been well over 100 staff.
Well, off him easy now, he's had to retire at a place called Kabanga.
Hey, we're always really Canberra focused, and that was the sad thing about the demise of the TV station, is that we lost so much history of the town, and a lot of community organisations didn't get the exposure that we were giving them because we had an hour news.
So Greg spearheaded the news for years, and as you know, he came from a long history with Channel 10, and he was part of the real heyday of Channel 10. So it was exciting times.
In 1988, Channel 10 bought the station, bringing it more in line with the network's branding, and the soon-to-be familiar one-hour news bulletin at 6 p.m. returned to television.
A special presentation live from Old Parliament House with David Allen.
Weather, looking forward to tomorrow as well as today's conditions on the day a new Parliament House was declared open.
In 1989, the biggest change to regional television occurred: aggregation. No longer did Capital Television have a commercial monopoly, having now to compete with Prime and Win TV, as each station expanded into each other's market and bought their own local news bulletins. But Channel 10's holding company, Northern Star Holdings, now in financial trouble, sold Capital in 1989 to Charles Curran. Local news for Wollongong lasted just 9 months on Capital, and planned news for the Central West never eventuated. But the Canberra news remained.
Rosemary, and that's it for tonight. Good night. Good night.
There's a guy called Jeff Hiscock who was reading the news with Christine Kaninmonth, and that team was outstanding, and that really spurred me along. In fact, it was that team reading the news, there was Greg doing sport, and there was Mike Larkin doing weather. And you're right, to have a 1 hour bulletin in a city of then, when I moved to Canberra, was about 320,000 people, a lot more now. But to have a full 1 hour bulletin, and what we called a composite bulletin, which had local, national and international news, that was just the place to be.
The biggest thing that we introduced, and we seem to be doing it as good or as well as anybody, were the live crosses. We'd show up anywhere at any time, and I think when we lost our news service, that's the fires came in. The terrible fires were not long after that, and it really exposed the fact that had we been on air, we would have been all over that, and there was no local news on the weekend. So not even the ABC, I don't think, were on the air. So nobody was being informed about the severity of the fires. I don't know whether that's ever been exposed to its full extent.
But in 1992, Charles Curran made a fundamental mistake and moved the news to 5 p.m.
No, it didn't work at all. It was a disaster. In fact, we felt as though we were broadcasting to nobody. We had a very small audience. It just didn't work. Our audience had been so attuned to us being at 6 o'clock. So we were still pumping out the same product, but nobody was watching it. It was very, very disheartening, and luckily, I don't know how long it seemed to take, an eternity, but it might have only been a month, and then they switched it back. So it was not a good thing.
In 1995, Curran sold Capital to Southern Cross Broadcasting, who quickly rebranded the station again to 10 Capital to cut costs.
I'd always wanted to work at Channel 10. This was the passion. Everybody wanted to work at Channel 10. But I wanted to apply desperately and get a job at Channel 10, but to no avail. And they kept saying, no. One thing led to another, and the weather presenter, Mike Larkin, resigned. moved to Channel 10 in Melbourne. So I put my hand up and did an audition, and kind of the rest is history from that point of view.
Well, behind me is a chroma key board. Now, at the moment, as you can see, it looks pretty bland and pretty blue. But with the help of the guys upstairs in the control room, what we do is electronically key vision over the chroma key board like this. There you go.
As the time went on, and yes, the new owners came on, you could see things starting to shrink. I think the thing that has got to us all over the years is it's the penultimate dollar that drives, I suppose, creativity, professional journalism, and the ability to be able to present something that's really outstanding.
Canberra was my hometown. It was where I was born, and spent my primary school years here. So for me, it was a bit of a homecoming. And when I arrived in Canberra, I remember coming in to meet the staff and thinking this was such a fantastic organisation, a really large building out there in Watson. It had a real presence of a TV station. The newsroom was right at the back of the building, and it was close to the car park. And I remember one Christmas Day we had to work to produce the news on Christmas Day, and we had a fantastic game of cricket over lunchtime out in the back paddock there. I think there might have been a few drinks imbibed too. I don't know how the news got to air that night, but I do remember wearing a Santa hat, reading the weather. Anyway, not my finest moment on television.
Despite the cost by Southern Cross, 10 Capital continued, and in 1997 its value was well and truly proven. 10 Capital News' coverage of the Royal Canberra Hospital implosion disaster went national. Craig Allen was the reporter.
Instead of a safe, fully contained implosion, boats on the lake and crowds on the other shore were showered with debris, shards of steel warped and twisted by the force of the blast. The 12-year-old girl was hit and instantly killed.
And we'd been actually working on a documentary that was going to run the night that the hospital was brought down by explosives. And we'd been working for many weeks in the lead up to the day that the implosion was going to take place to put this documentary together. I had a bit of an emotional interest because I was born in the hospital, and for that reason I think I was chosen to do some of the live broadcasts from the site. Well, once the implosion happened and we realised that there'd been a very serious accident, we essentially scrapped the documentary and broadcast live from the location. And it was actually on that story that I did my first national live crosses.
And I'd interviewed Rod McCracken, I think his name was, the guy that was doing the explosives. And I was only reflecting on it the other day, because I do walk around the lake a fair bit, how he could have got it so wrong, to have shrapnel flying hundreds of metres away from the actual explosion. So, yeah, we were all over that event.
I was doing a breakfast show, and we actually broadcast from there on the day of the implosion with my offsider, and we recall very vividly that something had gone terribly wrong during our broadcast and the implosion of the hospital.
Despite softer ratings at the dawn of the millennium, 10 Capital News was neck and neck with Win News, and the station's revenue was reaching record highs. Prime News, barely with any viewers, had been axed once before being axed permanently in June 2001, along with several other bulletins, while the ABC returned to local TV news in September.
As I said, we started on the 3rd of September 2001, and then of course we know what happened on September 11, 2001, and that kind of changed everything. We were just beginning to get ready to go to air and build a team, and that accelerated the need for us to go to air sooner rather than later. So we scrambled and got the team together, and people were trained on the spot, and we went to air for the first time on the 24th of September 2001.
As 2001 continued, technical problems at 10 Capital highlighted the lack of investment from Southern Cross, as equipment started to fail on air and old tape showed wear and screen. But the news continued.
They started definitely running the place down. The equipment wasn't being serviced properly. The audio desk, which had been there for 35 years, just used to pack up when we're on air. So we just get a thing in your ear saying, oh, look, we've lost audio. And they'd go to something else while they sorted it out. But it was so frustrating seeing the resources being taken away from us.
Then, November 21st, 2001 happened. Southern Cross called it quits on 10 Capital News. Southern Cross also axed its North Queensland bulletins.
Southern Cross Broadcasting announcing it's axing the North Queensland local news service. The company has decided 10 local news is commercially unviable.
I was playing golf. I was in some charity day or something like that, and I was in a bunker, I think, when somebody came over to me and said, "Oh, your news has been axed, you better get into work." And yeah, look, it was just like a sledgehammer for me, having put 17 years of my life into that station. It was absolutely gut-wrenching, and yeah, to go into the station and seeing people crying, and they'd been sort of marched into the boss's office and told what their entitlement was, and there were union people, I think, wandering around. There were people trying to counsel people as well. It was an awful day, and we were given the opportunity to keep doing the bulletin till the end of the week and say goodbye to our audience, or finish it up immediately. And I think we may have had a few hours to think about it, and everybody said, "No, stick it up your arse."
I actually joined the Department of Defence and ran their media liaison unit. So I picked up, and I was very fortunate in working with Defence. And it was a colleague of mine, Andrea Close, who had, I think, auditioned. She used to work at Wynn with Peter Leonard, and she took up the weather there. And she rang me. I'm pretty sure it was Andrea who rang me when I was in Darwin. Doing a job up there for Defence, and we had officers up there, and she told me the news. And of course, to me, it was just unbelievable that they would actually finally, pull the pin on that.
I'd seen it before. The sad thing was that when I started my journalism career in 1992, my first job lasted all of 7 months before that newsroom closed down in regional Queensland. Unfortunately, I had seen these changes come, and when they come, they often come without warning for the staff.
I was at work when I heard it, and as I say, I was really disappointed. It's not good to see, even if it is your competition, it's not good to see any media organisation close down. And it's not just that people are losing jobs, although that's terribly important, but it is a really important service. And yes, they were competition, but they were doing an important local job.
The Australian Broadcasting Authority eventually forced most regional TV stations to produce a minimum quota of local news. Prime and the now renamed Southern Cross 10 started local updates in 2004, and a weekly magazine show, State Focus, broadcast out of Canberra until 2009. The local updates were poorly received by the former staff.
It's a sausage machine, and they churn them out for all of their regional markets. So as a journalist/presenter, all you do all day is sit there and just spit them out one after the other. And there's no feeling to that. And it's cold. And to me, it looks cold.
It was pathetic. There's no other way to describe what they tried hard, and I felt sorry for the people coming in after us, but it was just tokenistic. It was rip and read, and it was just television at its absolute basic, just to cover their ass with the legislation.
Following a dramatic affiliation reshuffle in 2016, Southern Cross 10 became Channel 9 Canberra, and as part of the new deal, local news returned to Canberra after a 15-year absence, albeit presented from Sydney with local news windows.
And this might be egotistical, but why wouldn't you throw a Canberra person to read the news to Canberra? You know what I mean? Not necessarily me, but why wouldn't you do that? To put a personality that's well known by Canberrans to broadcast, I think they'd have a much better chance. That is mind-boggling. The reporting, it's okay. You're asking my personal opinion, so I'm giving them to you. I can't watch it. I try to watch it, and I can't watch wins, stuff being pumped in. It just makes me annoyed. I just long for a real Canberra bulletin. I know the ABC does it, and it's not bad, but I still don't think it's Canberra. It's just not Canberra enough, in my opinion.
Yes, I have watched the bulletin, and I don't think it's there because I feel as though, again, the production values of that, and perhaps I'm wrong, but the production values of that seem to be that there are intros recorded and then they're buttered up with the packages, whereas when you do a full live bulletin for the market that you're in, you have that empathy, you have that feeling, you have that vibe and that buzz about it.
Today, only ABC News is presented and produced live in the ACT and remains the only bulletin to broadcast weekend editions. Almost 20 years since the axing of 10 Capital News, the public still remember their dedicated nightly news on 10 Capital, a station that strived to be the pulse of the national capital.
I think as a great community station that unfortunately, got taken over by a company that didn't see the value of the community and what they were broadcasting to. But yeah, I think the staff that worked in my time were just, they loved what they did and we enjoyed broadcasting.
I guess for me it signifies a young, energetic time in my life when I had a lot more energy than a married dad with 2 young kids now. It was a great time in my life in my late 20s, and I made some really good friends. We had some very long nights out on the town and we made some really great friendships, and it was a really vibrant place to work.
Except a bunch of great memories, and I'd love to see what it does mean. I'd love to see something come back and give people such as yourself and others a real red-hot go at getting their teeth into what Greg and Craig and people before that all had a go at doing, and that was being part of a dynamic product that we just, really wanted to get to work every day. It was that good. It was that good.
I think the Canberra community really should fight to keep its local services, its local newspaper, its local radio programs. It's important. Our news, our local news reflects who we are back to us, and it is really important to fight to keep these services and these organisations.
That's really cool. Oh yeah, we need a hairstyle one. I really want to see what I look like with a mohawk. Can you do that?
You can come on ball.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Greg Robson now with the main story of the day, and quite a controversial one there, Greg. Bit of a fly as well, I see.
I'll just get rid of it.
In the second game of their $7 million match.
The synoptic chart, and it does show, if we put it up, the synoptic chart, a high pressure system with some cells. We'll have to pretend it's there, okay? There's actually a high pressure system there.
Fifth seed, Goran Ivanisevic, has joined 3 dark horses.
What was his name again?
Goran.
Yeah. Just in a nutshell, with your 4th and 5th baby. You're going to the toilet.
You're going to have to start again.
Still to come in sport, the great white shark, the great white shark, you know who I'm talking about, snaps up the biggest prize of his career.
Greg Norman, but after the...
I told you not to hit the button. You hit the off button.
Well, it's pushback.
Yeah, you're pushing on it. You can't push on it.
There with our weather report, and I'll have to try and make one up for.
Wow, there we go, Tom. You're on. Whoa, see, live television. And tonight...
Story. And I'm quietly hoping it's going to be the skiing. And just a reminder, if we can't bring you the skiing in just a few moments, for all the sport that we were hoping to bring you tonight, tune in for Sports Tonight, which is coming up after the late news at around 10:30. We're going to you, or we're going to the sport? We're going to... Here's Greg with the weather.
Next man is going to say, after that you deserve a drink.